Thank you so much, President Otunbayeva, for those very beautiful and inspirational remarks. You really represent the hope for your region and, in a certain sense, the hope for the world. Last July, Mongolia assumed the chairmanship of the Community of Democracies. This is a global association of more than 100 countries that work together in many different ways to help strengthen democracy where it is weak or non-existent, and to strengthen democratic norms within the international system. Tomorrow, Mongolia will preside over a meeting of the UN Democracy Caucus, and it is looking for new ways to strengthen democratic cooperation in Asia. There's going to be a lunch meeting tomorrow bringing together Asian democracies to talk about how to strengthen democratic cooperation in Asia, and to use the community to aid countries like Libya and Tunisia that are undergoing difficult democratic transitions. I can think of no one more fitting to lead this effort than President Tsakhia Elbegdorj of Mongolia. He is the son of a herdsman from a western province of Mongolia, and his foreign policy advisor before the dinner tonight, Puriv Surin, told me he wanted me to tell you that he's the youngest of 8 boys in his family, that he has 5 of his own children, and that he has adopted 24 children, many of whom were orphans. I've had the pleasure of sitting next to his second son at tonight's dinner, Erdene. He has embraced free market and democratic principles. He did so when he was a journalist, a military journalist in Lviv in Ukraine, during the glasnost period in the Soviet Union in the late 1980s. He returned to Mongolia and became a key leader of the demonstration in December 10th, 1989, in front of the Cultural Center for Youth that sparked Mongolia's democratic revolution. As one of Mongolia's founding leaders, as was already noted tonight, he helped draft its 1992 constitution that guarantees freedom of the press, religion, association, and individual rights. During his long career as a citizen politician, including 2 terms as Mongolia's prime minister, he has sought to deepen Mongolia's democratic roots, to fight corruption, to reform the country's judicial system, and to improve transparency and equal treatment under law. His initiative to establish a citizens' hall, which provides citizens a venue to discuss policies and share social and political issues, reflects his understanding of how ordinary citizens need to be part of building a democratic culture. Following the election-related violence in the summer of 2008, when Mongolia was on the verge of a grave internal conflict, he diffused the situation by negotiating a peaceful compromise with the ruling People's Revolutionary Party that helped preserve Mongolia's democracy. There's a lesson in that for Yemen and some other countries in the Middle East today that are undergoing very difficult processes of change and transition. President Elbegdorj is committed to the principle of democratic solidarity. Under his leadership, Mongolia has responded without hesitation to President Otunbayeva's request for Mongolia to share its democratic experience with Kyrgyzstan. And last March, he phoned and wrote a letter to the Burmese Democratic opposition leader, the Nobel Peace Laureate Daw Aung San Suu Kyi, offering his support and encouragement. The statement issued by President Elbegdorj on March 16th demonstrates his spirit and commitment, and I would like to read a brief sentence from it. As we continue to watch the millions of people struggling in the Middle East for greater freedoms and oppressive regimes fall, I am confident that the strength of the Burmese people to peacefully but forcefully push for democracy that is rightly theirs will be realized. And I would encourage Burma's leaders to realize that democracy should not be feared but embraced, and that no amount of oppression or the long-standing violence against the Burmese and ethnic groups can stand against a people that wants to be free. And just yesterday, in his address to the UN General Assembly, President Elbegdorj expressed his full support for Libya's transition, and I quote from his statement, transition toward democracy, justice, and human rights, and he called upon the international community to condemn the Assad regime in Syria for its inhuman and brutal crackdown on, and I quote, the courageous people who are craving freedom and justice. And then he told the world's remaining dictators, and this is a quote, that love for freedom is the greatest force in this world. No tyranny can resist it forever. This is what he said to the General Assembly yesterday. President Elbegdorj has also indicated that he is ready in his position as the chairman of the Community of Democracies to lead a delegation of the community to Libya to help promote international solidarity with the process of democratic transition that is now beginning there. It is now my great pleasure to call upon Noel Latif of the Foreign Policy Association to read a citation and with me to present to President Elbegdorj the New York Democracy Forum's Presidential Medal. Very well done.
For his critical role as a leader of Mongolia's historic democratic revolution in 1989, for his leadership during the following 2 decades of Mongolia's successful democratic transition and in the consolidation of its new democratic institutions, for his solidarity with other democrats in Asia, in the Middle East, and in other regions of the world where people are struggling for freedom, and for his leadership of the community of democracies through which democratic countries and civil societies are cooperating to advance democracy worldwide, the New York Democracy Forum is proud to present Tsakhia Elbegdorj, President of Mongolia, with the New York Democracy Forum Presidential Medal. Mr. President, please come up and receive your medal.
Oh, come on, help me.
Okay.
Carl, get in the picture.
I think everything is great. Our national anthem was well performed today. I hope you see my face now. Yesterday there was President Obama's palm actually closing my face in a group photo at the UN. But today in Mongolian media, there is a new theory of conspiracy that President Obama and President Elbegdorj is making the PR for him, you know, for the Elbegdorj. That's really good PR for me. Yeah. Sorry for President Obama, you know. He actually didn't intend to do that, you know. After the photo, he said, hey, guys, like this, and that closed my face. Yeah. Madam President Otunbayba and my friends, Karl Gershman and others, and let me thank, first of all, the Foreign Policy Association and the National Endowment for Democracy for inviting me and honoring me today. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm a son of herdsmen, and you know, I born and grown up, and it's a really, really great tribute to my people, actually, who bravely choose freedom, is standing in front of you, is speaking here. And also, I want to start by offering my sympathy and solidarity with the American people on the occasion of the 10th anniversary of the 9/11 tragedy. As we stand here in shadow of the Freedom Tower, I can say this: America has emerged stronger and more determined, and I think the world is more determined to fight for democracy and individual liberties. Ladies and gentlemen, in this room I see many champions of democracy. I see representatives from the groups and organizations that have played leadership roles in promoting democracy, human rights, and rule of law. Some studies show that the history of democracy accounts for roughly 2,500 years in the history of mankind. This year, Mongolia celebrated 2,220 years of statehood, which marks a historic event when nomadic Mongol tribes choose their first ruler at a great assembly. So I guess you can say that we Mongols were there, very close to the start of the birth of democracy as a system of governance. That man who created the great Mongol state, Genghis Khan, said, one thing which we all have to be mindful: it is easy to conquer the world on the horseback. What's challenging is to dismount and try to govern. Today, Mongolia is recognized as one of the most politically and economically liberalized states in our region. My country has been referred to as the democratic anchor in the East, and I believe this is very true. When we look around the world, I think we can say that democracy or democratic process is now the dominant political system in the world. In the early 1970s, Professor Samuel Huntington identified and defined the third wave of global democratization. Since then, the number of democracies has tripled. Today, majority of the countries that are gathering at this great assembly can be considered democratic. I believe that the Arab Spring we have witnessed this year has set forth a fourth wave of democracy that is washing across the shores of many countries, especially those in the Middle East. This should give us a collective sense of optimism, but it must be careful optimism. If we examine the trends of democratic development as it has unfolded in many states, there are grounds for concern. In many instances, it can be like a pendulum that can swing back as far as it has swung forward. Professor Larry Diamond, who directs the Democracy Development and the Rule of Law Center at Stanford University, has studied democratic development, and his findings should give us pause. He estimates that since the mid of 1970s, there have been 53 breakdowns or reversals of democratic governance. Roughly half of them have occurred since 1999. Professor Diamond has stated his deep concern that these breakdowns in democratic governance are accelerating. As part of this, he sees civil institutions also under siege by anti-democratic forces. Just as these countries and institutions are being stressed and facing possible reversals, there has been a decrease in financial support for democracy, building programs that will have wide-ranging implications. For example, a lack of funds directed towards civil society organizations will have a direct impact on activities such as trainings, workshops, exchange programs, election monitoring, and support for education programs that are critical to the institutionalization of democratic governance. My friends, this is very sad. The Arab Spring, the fall of Berlin Wall, and the ending of the Cold War did not just happen by accident. The free world, the advanced industrial democracies of North America and Western Europe were united in purpose and dedication to fight communism, the perseverance and sacrifice, investment, and focused work that involved many thousands of people who have participated in workshops, trainings, and outreach to those living under oppression. This helped collapse the Berlin Wall and peacefully end the Cold War without a shot being fired. You know, now I'm reading my paper, which I prepared for this meeting, and to share with you. And I think when I talk these things, I also said my concerns about democracy at the opening of the General Assembly of the UN, and I would like to read also part of my speech here, as I feel here as a General Assembly of democratically minded people here. You know, I said, the Arab change will be followed by the Arab challenge. Although a democratic process is homegrown phenomenon, it should be supported by international cooperation. Here I have a message to industrialized democratic countries. Do not withdraw from the battle. On the other hand, democratization does not mean westernization. Democracy ought to develop naturally in line with historical and cultural development specifies of given country. Nonetheless, a respect for freedom, justice, and human rights, and strict abidance by the rule of law are common to all successful and responsive democracies. Bad governance is the worst problem of all. Therefore, any aspiration to improve and streamline such a governance ought to be strongly supported at all times. Libya has entered a new era as a result of the relentless courage and patience of the Libyan rebels who have persevered for many months in their struggle for freedom, human rights, and democracy. Colonel Gaddafi called his fellow countrymen rats and brutally hunt them down and exterminate. Now he himself is being hunted as a rat from hole to hole, from trench to trench. And this is the fate which awaits anyone who suppresses the people's love for freedom and desire to live in dignity. I think that was a good line, that the right line our diplomats wanted to skip from my speech, eliminate, but I stood, I had to read it at the General Assembly, I read it, yeah. Also, I condemn the international community should not shy away from condemning the regime of Syria's Bashar al-Assad, who has inhumanely and brutally chosen bloodshed to crack down on freedom and justice, craving peaceful protesters by using combat vehicles, snipers, and military force. Let us unanimously demand that he ends his atrocities. We must make the necessary decision to that effect without delay and help the courageous people of Syria who are craving freedom and justice and are losing dozens of their brave sons and daughters every day. The love for freedom is the greatest force in the world. No tyranny, no cruelest regime can resist it forever. I would like to say these words to the authorities of Yemen and dictators seeking to suppress their citizens' fight for freedom. That was part of my speech at the UN. You know, my friends, I think justice is non-negotiable. It's absolute. Values of the human societies works as the laws of physics. And we know all that apple falls everywhere the same. I think it's a long way to go for arrival of the liberal democracy in a single Arab country, but desire to live in dignity with freedom and political choice is becoming almost universal. In many places, people feel generally greater unease, if not disgust, with their authoritarian rule. We all know that on December 17, 2010, in Tunisia, young man called Mohamed Bouazizi. But his cart was confiscated by police, and he went in front of the provisional headquarters and doused himself in fuel and lit himself on fire. I think he does not have anything, no honest judiciary to hear his case, no independent media in Tunisia during that time, I think, to give him voice, no credible party to represent his views, no fair and just election to change their leader. But I usually think that, but making that those media, those judiciary today worked for the Gaddafi or the Ben Ali, tomorrow it cannot, it's really difficult to turn out. It should work for the man whose name is Mohamed Bouazizi. I think it will take time. I think there will be difficult times in Middle East, in emerging democracies, and we have to help them. I think when we were in the streets in Ulaanbaatar in a cold winter, I think we felt that your support, American support, and other friends' support there, and because of that we succeeded. And because of that, my simple message is do not withdraw from the battle. Every country has a problem, you know, every country has a problem, and we have to support that those brave men and women who are fighting for their freedom. And I think that kind of those tyrannies, those people has two strategies. One strategy is repression, one strategy is diversion. But those strategies are not going to work at all. Because world has changed, because there is new technology, because there is new generation. You know, during 20 years, there were, when we tried to change my country, there weren't any cell phone, any Facebook, any Twitter, anything. Now they have that, you know. Those dictators now ought to understand that. And imagine that Mongolia was 20-some years ago, like a North Korea-like society. Mongolia is the second communist country, remaining under communism, you know, for 70 years. Today we are chairing community of democracy. Today Mongolia is the champion for the global fight for democracy. And in 1990, without shattering single window, we actually made the transition between Soviet Union and between China. During that time, Soviet Union was intact and Tiananmen massacre happened, you know, but we made that great transition. We made that great transition without bloodshed, and we made political change and economic change at the same time. Many people say that that's not Asian way, you know, but we broke that old stereotype. It can be enjoyed in Asia, it can be enjoyed even by poor herdsmen in Mongolia. You know, when the journalists ask me why you are talking about human rights, why you are talking about rule of law, these are the Western values. My answer is no, they are not Western values. That's my value, that's my freedom, that's my democracy, you know. My parents worked for the Soviet type of kolkhoz. They were confiscated all their cattle. In order to slaughter one sheep, they had to get permission. In order to go from one province to other province, they had to get permission, like visa. Now, I think in Mongolia, all those things are actually eliminated. Now, all herdsmen have their herd, their cattle. And now, in order to slaughter any sheep, they don't need any permission, you know. That's their freedom, owning their sheep. My mother every night pray for Dalai Lama or for Buddha. That's her freedom. That's not Western freedom. That's her democracy, actually. That's her freedom. You know, believing. And I think that kind of cry and that kind of things usually make people to listen. I really think that the people's outcry have a voice and vote. They became personal. When they became the personal stakeholder, when they became having the personal voice, I think they became the stakeholders in their future. And we see many challenges in the world. You know, they go for their freedom, and they usually succeed, and they usually, you know, they even tolerate the high price. They even tolerate everything, but they cannot tolerate one thing: worst government, corruption. Most of the democracies failed because of the corruption. Because of that, while we are chairing the community of democracies, we launched the initiative Zero Tolerance on Corruption. Zero tolerance on corruption. I think that's that, and I hope many states will support our initiative. And I really feel that people hearing that louder than those voices for freedom, than the fires against them, you know, gunshots against them. And we have to support that. Those people's voice louder than those gunshots from the militias, those tyrannies. And the world, I think, listening to that. And Mongolia, we do not have anything to teach to the people, but we have something to share with others. And we really would like to share our lessons, and there are many lessons, and I wrote many things, but it's too late, you know. You have to go to home and to enjoy, you know, this meeting here, and I would like to say, you know, Mongolians one time exhorted some nations to build the biggest walls, longest walls. But today we would like to help to those nations suppressed by tyranny to tear down those curtains. And many people, just I entered to this room, many people asked, I would like to go to Mongolia, you know, please come to Mongolia. There is only country, you know, yeah, more horses than people. We have 6 million horses and 3 million people. Many asked, I would like to ride horses. Please come to ride horses, you know. That's a great place to do business. I think if you would like to see a real challenge coming from communism to freedom, that's the place to go to see. If you would like to see endless step, if you would like to see good-hearted people, that's the place to go. That's the place called Mongolia. And I really want you to come to Mongolia and work together and to make our world the better place to live in. And you know, I really believe that God has planted in every heart the desire to live free. And even though that desire crushed sometimes, it will rise again. It will rise again. And I believe that one day all men and women will live free. And let the freedom come to every house. Let the freedom come to everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Maybe three or four quick questions?
Yes.
We'll do it
Yeah.
quickly.
Yeah. Really talking.
I know it's late. But we've received a number of written questions. It's late. We're going to do this, you know, maybe about half the questions I'll read, and the president will I've heard him do this before. He has a very succinct way of answering questions. So please take your seats. It will be about 5 more minutes while he's going to respond to a few questions. First, I want to note that while the president was speaking, we were joined by one of the people that Bob Miller introduced earlier, Erwin Cotler, who is a Canadian parliamentarian, the former justice minister, and really the leading voice in Canada for human rights, and really one of the leading voices in the world. Erwin Cotler's sitting right there. Okay, here we go. How do you deal with the 2 powerful neighbors who are not democratic?
You know, yeah, we really respect our 2 neighbors. Of course, our foremost importance to have great relations with our neighbors. And we used to live next to each other for centuries. And we know how to deal with our 2 neighbors. And, you know, sometimes I feel that like a freedom loving a small pony between 2 big elephants. No, when you have that value connection, we feel that we are connected with the world. We feel that, you know, world is our friend. And because of that, you know, all other nations we call our 3rd neighbor. But that 3rd neighbor expression was first was said that by the James Baker when he visited June in 1990 in Mongolia, and he said, you know, you have 2 neighbors, and we would like to be your 3rd neighbor. Actually, we lack that expression. Now that's in our official policy. And we really welcome all our people from the 3rd neighbor, and we really welcome those investments. I see today many investors here interested to invest in Mongolia. I think Mongolia can be a great hub, financial hub, great hub for the mining. And you know, we share with China more than 4,000 kilometers border, and we are next to the biggest, fastest growing economy in the world. And also Russia is a big country, and Mongolia can be, you know, very good hub for not only for freedom, for the free market, for the exercising, for the taking those opportunities, make good business. Yeah.
Now, in following up on that, there's a question that says, as an emerging economy, how will Mongolia manage mining and other resource extraction in a way that balances development needs with environmental concerns?
You know, we are aware about that. There are many nations who endowed with the natural resources usually end up very badly. There are few nations succeeded. When I see what kind of nations are succeeding, those nations are free and those nations are open. Those nations are governed by not elite few. Those nations are governed by the will of their people. I think Mongolia is a democratic country. Mongolia is an open country. Because of that, we listen to our people, and we are governed by their instructions. And people are closely, very closely watching. There is no single media entity which is controlled by government. Every media in Mongolia free and private. I think also we have a very healthy civil society, and they are following, they are seeing every mistake, everything we make. I think we do not feel that we are making mistake, but when they criticize, when they demand those things, we see that, and we are learning by doing. They are like the, you know, mother-in-law and following every shadow things and looking, you did this wrong, you did this wrong, you know. You have to, those things alive there and keep it. I think those will be guaranteed. Of course, our great neighbors, and if you make their good business in processing, if you export, there is very close, big markets in, to the Mongolia. Those 2 things, I think, very attractive to make business in Mongolia. Yeah.
2 more questions. The first one is, how should the world respond to the speech earlier today at the United Nations of Iran's President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad?
Yeah, I actually spoke before him because of that. Yeah. If I speak, I spoke after him. I speak the same. I would make same speech. Yeah. You know, yeah, those people who are suppressing those freedom and their nations, desire to live in freedom, I think they are not going to succeed. Why I like the freedom, why we feel that a strong link with the United States of America. I usually say that some nations, offer the world fine wine or fine cars. Why America is attractive? America is offering the freedom. America is stand on the freedom very firmly. Because of that, that's the strongest force to attract the world. I think we would like to be with you. Well, earlier, 20 years ago, we got your help and your support. Now, our turn to support others. Even small Mongolia has that commitment. When I met with the President Obama, I told him, we have a shared strategic interest. Why I am saying that? Shared means that we dream together for that interest, rule of law, human rights, justice. And we share the strategic interest. We are fighting for that together. We fought it in Iraq, more than thousands of the men women in a uniform. They served shoulder to shoulder with others in Iraq, now in Afghanistan. Now we are doubling our commitment in Afghanistan. I think you see that when you got one small nation, free nation, it became, friend of the free world. When people get their freedom, usually people tend to make their actions more thoughtful. When they make their actions more thoughtful, they become more creative. Because of that, from freedom there is prosperity, from freedom there is peace. I really believe in that. Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Thank you. One last question we have a group here from southern Mongolia, which is in China, and they've raised the question of what the policy is of the Mongolian government toward Mongolian asylum seekers from China who come to Mongolia, and they mentioned the case of Mr. Badzanga, who was arrested and sent back to China.
Tough question. In the world, there is 10 million Mongolians, and roughly 3 million live in Mongolia, and 5 million live in China, in inner Mongolia. Twice as much Mongolians actually live in China. And of course, we would like to maintain great relations with China, but we never shy to speak in Mongolia about human rights violation. We never shy those people who strive to be free. We talk it, our press talk it, our people talk it, my government talk it. But of course, maintaining neighborly and respectful good relations with China is very important. I think about China, whole world are speaking. Not only Mongolia, you guys stay ocean away from China, even you are speaking here about China. And we are also talking about China, but we are trying to keep very good relations, but we are never trade with our values, of course. Yeah, we stand on our values. Yeah.
And I know that Mongolia is an inspiration to the Mongolians in China as well as to people around the world. This is a very special evening, and thank you for taking those questions and for answering them so clearly and so frankly. Mongolia really is something special, and your leadership is something which is valued very deeply, not only in Mongolia, but here. And thank you so much for being with us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
That concludes the evening. Thank you very much.